but I wanted to welcome everyone to our Sustainable Homes Professional Showcase. We are excited to have 3 previous SHP professionals joining us today to share their final projects and insights, plus a special SHP instructor who will be our MC. Earth Advantage originally offered SHP in the form of an 84-hour-long course, which has now been consolidated into a 15-hour online on-demand course, which was launched in the spring of 2021. Many attendees today are likely already SHP participants and or familiar with the course, but if you are not, we'd like to provide a little additional information. SHP is an in-depth, interactive, and field-tested online training program for industry professionals who are looking to take their residential projects and building craft to the next level of quality. Training topics covered in SHP are designed to maximize health, comfort, durability, savings, and sustainability benefits for home buyer and owner clients. The benefit of an online on-demand class is that you can sign up anytime you would like, and you can take the course at your own pace. And the SHP Final Project and designation are completely optional, but highly recommended as they help put principles into practice by guiding participants in designing their own high-performance building or research project. We plan to offer another SHP showcase in the fall, so even if you're just getting started out, you have plenty of time to get that SHP Final Project submitted to us. So if you'd like to present in our next showcase, you'll have that opportunity. After learning about us, a little bit about SHP, if you're still kind of on the edge about whether or not you'd like to take the plunge and join the class, we wanted to let you know that you can take individual modules, kind of dip your toe in the water and see if it's something that might interest you. We hope you appreciate and will be inspired by today's presenters, and we thank you all for being here. Real quick, a little bit more about SHP. Logistic-wise, it includes training videos, site visit tours, live webinars, guest speaker presentations, product and technology demonstrations, and a robust continuing education opportunity. So it's kind of your one-stop shop for your continuing education credits. And also, like our presenters today, chose to take this path of earning their Sustainable Homes Professional designation. You can find this information of the pricing breakdown as well as more information on the course on our website. And again, here is our earthadvantage.org/SHP online, where you can find out more. All right, so I'm just about done talking. Before I turn it over, I would like to introduce Stefan Aguier today. Stefan founded Green Hammer in 2002, evolving the business into a full-service design build firm committed to advancing the highest standards for green building. An SHP certified passive house consultant and building science expert, he has been a pioneer of Oregon's green building movement and has been involved with many of the nation's highest scoring LEED Platinum homes and first residential and commercial passive house buildings in the Pacific Northwest. Stefan has been invited to speak at every major green building conference across the country, and he has taught the SHP course annually since 2010. So we're very happy to have Stefan here today. Thank you, Stefan. I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Aubrey. Let's up. If you could keep the presentation up, that would be awesome. So really excited to have everyone here today. Aubrey, I think there's a couple of questions in the chat just about CEs, so maybe we can get to that in a minute. We have 3 really awesome SHPs presentations today, and so I'm going to introduce our 3 presenters. So I have Daniel Durham, and Daniel is the owner and general contractor behind Durham Construction LLC, and he has a really great presentation about his own project, and really excited to dive into that and the details. Melissa Mulder-Wright, she's the owner and residential designer for Step by Step Design LLC, is doing a really cool project out in Southwest Washington around fire resilience. And then Justin Wolverton, Quality Assurance Director at Noyes Development Company, really nice to the point presentation. I'm excited about that one too. and it's going to be great. So I don't really want to drag this part out. At the end of the presentations, we'll be looking at questions in the Q&A, and I'll be kind of selecting a couple to go over with everyone. If I don't get any questions, then I will ask questions, but I always like to pull from you, the audience.
Cool. Well, good morning, everybody. My name's Daniel Durham, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity to be here. I'm a builder in Portland, Oregon, and owner of Durham Construction. And my subject today is the integrated design process. So just a little bit about Durham Construction. We are a residential construction company specializing in modern and contemporary construction. Our work is really personified by a dedication, attention to detail, and to quality. This photo that you see here is a recent mid-century modern renovation we did with Risa Boyer Architecture. If you'd like to learn more about us or follow us on Instagram, you can find our handles on the bottom right there. Both are Durham Construction PDX. And I just wanted to say that we love to connect with people in the industry, builders and architects and designers. So if you feel inspired to reach out, we'd love to grab a coffee or a happy hour with you. So for the final SHP project, I chose my own personal home. So this isn't a hypothetical home, but a real project that's been developed and designed and set to break ground next year. Yume is the Japanese word for dream. So I chose that because it's been my veritable lifelong dream to build my own home. And also because I knew that I wanted to build a Japanese inspired home. So a couple layers of meaning for me personally. Some of the highlights, my performance goal is Passive House certification. It's set to break ground March 4th of 2024. Big shout out to the team that I worked with, Guggenheim Architecture and Design for the architecture, Dyer Studio Inc. for the interior design, and I worked with Green Hammer and Alec Boetzel for the Passive House consultation. Also wanted to mention that I'm actually doing a bit of internal fundraising to make this dream an actual reality. So if you happen to be in a position and want to participate in that, please reach out to me. I'll share some info. Overall, I just want to say I've never been more excited about anything in my entire life as this project. So I'm super excited to share this with everybody today. Wanted to highlight a few of the kind of unique design features. Programmatically speaking, my overarching goal was to create a place of peace with a really strong connection to nature. So you can see the image on the left. You can see there's kind of a primary home and a secondary building. And then really the key moment is kind of this inner courtyard in the middle with, they'll have some ginkgo trees, and kind of creates almost like a park or a campus sort of atmosphere. On the top left, you can see there's a really intentional courtyard that wraps around the primary suite and Japanese soaking tub there on the corner to kind of celebrate that. And then kind of toward the bottom, you'll see there's a sunken living room and a kind of integrated tree that'll be integrated into the floor. And then on the right, you'll see on the far side, there's a 700 square foot ADU that my mother's going to occupy, and a single car garage and an office and a gym. So I don't have a ton of time to go into all these cool details, but you can they're there if you want to kind of hone in on something that interests you. But I thought I'd speak to a couple that really are directly related to the IDP process. The first one is because this is a modern home, it has a lot of glass, and a lot of glass that faces south and east. So very early when we modeled it, we realized we had a problem with overheating or a really high cooling demand. So because IDP is an iterative process, we were able to catch this very early on and adjust the design to overcome that challenge. The other thing I wanted to point out is at the bottom of this chart, you'll see the thermal bridging is at 0.03, which is essentially a thermal bridge-free home. This was achieved through IDP as well. We worked with Peter Kahn of Bridge City Engineering for the structural, who's very familiar with green building and passive house. And I imagine he's probably even gone through this course himself. So by working with someone like that and using this process, we were able to build a modern home without structural steel and hence without any thermal bridging. So kind of getting into the meat of the presentation here, the IDP principles. I thought it'd be worthwhile to actually kind of step back for a moment and kind of look at the alternative, which we're all used to, which is the design, bid, build process. That's what I'm most familiar with. And I think that that's probably what most people in the design community in this area use. Probably 80 or 90% of them are some variation of that. And what that looks like typically is a client will meet with an architect, or sorry, select an architect or designer, go through programming, go through schematic, go through design development, sometimes even go as far as construction documents before starting to bring in other professionals to assess the project, like such as a builder for pricing or engineering or other trades. And the challenge with this is oftentimes a project has so much momentum and so much time and money and energy has put into this design and just emotional inertia, if you will, that by the time you reach that point, people are very reluctant to make changes, and they're also very expensive to make at that point. So what we see far too often with design bid build is that projects will get priced very late in the process and they'll get axed because the client couldn't even afford what got designed. Or another scenario we see is all the cool details are basically stripped from the project just to make the project happen. So I think it's worth noting that that is really the epitome of the deficiency in the design bid build process. And then kind of circling back to the presentation. So the difference is that IDP is really a multidisciplinary collaboration. IDP is an iterative process. That's really a key word. Kind of remind you the definition of that. It's the process of obtaining successfully closer solutions to a challenge. The ideal time to implement IDP from our experience is before design even begins. We often share with potential clients that the best piece of advice we can give you is to hire your contractor as early in the process as possible. In fact, we would even recommend that they're hired at the same time you hire your architect or designer. So we'd love to see our industry kind of move more toward that. So kind of key takeaway number one for me and my training and this process and what I learned was really just the immense value of building one unified team that communicates and cooperates together. Could not say enough good things about this team, Guggenheim's and Dyer Studio and Green Hammer, and just the synergy that we created. It was really unique. We just had this really free-form discussions and open dialogue, and all ideas were on the table. And I think that this key step is really was the foundation of success. Key takeaway number two, from what I found, there's real value in choosing to work with an energy consultant. Looking back on the project and kind of what I feel made it successful, we had one key meeting. It was actually our kickoff meeting, which Alex Botzel kind of led, and he really patiently schooled us on the principles of passive house and things we should be thinking about early in conceptual design and building orientation. And I think that meeting really set the tone for the project, and it really got everyone excited and it got everyone aligned on a common goal. Another real benefit is the opportunity to energy model, which it's not just guesswork, or it's not relying on your HVAC contractors load calcs. This is, very scientific. And because it's an iterative process, again, we would typically do some design, we would have it modeled, we get feedback, then tweak the design, then get it modeled again, more feedback, and subsequently the tweaks get smaller and smaller. And that's really the epitome of an iterative process. Key takeaway number 3 for me was the continuous insulation and continuous air barrier strategy really has to be considered early in design. Sometimes we'll see situations where a project has been designed and then a client will watch some YouTube videos and get excited about high performance building and decide at the end that they want to make it high performance, and that's just simply not how that works. And unfortunately, I think this is a big reason why high performance building gets pegged as expensive when it's really not if it's done during the design process. So for the UMA project, I chose Monopoly House framing approach. If you're familiar with Matt Reisinger, you're probably familiar with that term, which I think he probably coined. You can see from the image on the bottom kind of the resemblance. From my understanding, this is really the most effective approach for both insulation and air barrier. The one con is it is at a slightly higher cost because you are essentially framing the roof twice, if you will. Yeah, so kind of wrapping things up with just some pros and cons that I found from my own experience with IDP. I think first and foremost, what I love about IDP is that it's proactive. From our experience, we found design, bid, build to be inherently very reactive, and that we find we spend a lot of time and energy and bandwidth kind of like sending out RFIs and trying to get information and track down details that maybe we thought should have been included in the first place, where in IDP, that's all done collaboratively and on the front end. And because it's proactive, it's more efficient. Those things aren't being done during construction, but they're being done ahead of time. IDP is naturally a more collaborative approach, which in turn improves relationships. It optimizes build quality, optimizes timeline, and the really big one here is that it optimizes budget and estimating, because it's not just done once at the end, it's done early and it's done often. So, and because of all that, it creates less change orders, less unknowns, and less RFIs. So a few cons, if I had to kind of find a couple, it is more time on the front end. That's not to say that it's more time in general, it's just more time up front. And let's be honest, it is new and different to a lot of people. It's not what people are used to, so there is a learning curve. So that does require some educating and kind of selling your team on its value. So yeah, so appreciate all you guys for being here today and listening. Just again, big shout out to Earth Advantage and especially all the instructors. It was so cool to learn from them. So yeah, I wanted to open up to any questions out there.
So there's some really awesome questions, actually. They're perfect. So one from Patricia was, I always try to get contractors on projects early, but the difficulty is that contractors don't get paid for their time before construction. So how do you suggest handling this? So maybe hold that in your mind for a second, Daniel, and then I'm gonna ask this next question because I think you can maybe answer both of them in a combined way, and I have thoughts too. But on the IDP process, does bringing in more professionals for more of the early process mean pre-construction costs are higher, but later costs and timeframes will be lower? So that was from Misty Ersman. So you maybe take a shot at those, Daniel. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the first one, that's close to home, because I think that that's really a belief, really more than anything, that contractors aren't paid for this. A couple years ago, we switched to actually charging for cost estimates and early consultation. I think we're probably one of the few that do this, but it's a ton of hours each year that we were spending just donating to projects that a lot of times didn't go through. So I would encourage you to talk to your contractors about charging for this process. I mean, it's their time. You're in business to make money. There's no reason that we should be giving away hours and hours of consulting for free. So that's my thought. And then to answer the second question, I don't think pre-construction is any more expensive. I think it's really just about getting your subcontractors involved early, even for an hour or two, to kind of get their feedback early on, so that those adjustments can be made early in the process.
That's great. Yeah, same. I always find that if you can, the more you can suss out in design, that guarding against change orders is actually huge. You mentioned that in your presentation, and just having a lot less unknowns for the builder in particular. I mean, I think most projects, it's a standard that there's going to be changes and additional costs, and I feel like really good design build processes minimize those to whatever might be called like an owner change order, right? So in the process, the owner makes a change for a different flooring or tile or something like that. Well, that's pretty straightforward. But if you have most standard processes, you might have change orders for standard construction details that just weren't really ever figured out, or maybe have errors that could have been caught early on. I imagine you're alluding to some of the trade partners you bring in. Question was, do you bring in MEP specifically? And I would imagine that yes, that's key trades that you'd want involved if you beyond just your core team. And then another question maybe that would be good for you to really quick, so we don't have too much time. It's just like the firms involved primarily in the IDP with your project, Daniel. Did you have someone who initiated those meetings, did kind of like track the process, and like maybe tell us a little bit more about the roles and how you manage the process?
Well, I've got to be honest with you, like this was actually my first time fully implementing the IDP process. So I don't have a ton of experience to speak from on this, but because I was kind of the owner and the builder, I was kind of steering that ship, if you will, for those decisions and those conversations. And also the architect was helpful in kind of bringing in people at the right time. Yeah.
Great. I think that's good. We probably should get moving on. Those are really fantastic questions. There's some other general ones maybe we'll hit at the end, depending on timing. And thank you, Daniel. It was a really cool project. Get your money, because I can't wait to check that one out. Both in construction and then after. It's a really beautiful design, and love the concept. So yeah, super exciting.
Thanks, Evan.
All right, Melissa Mulder-Wright. So really pumped about this project and presentation too. Melissa's really passionate about this work, and excited to see what you've got for us today. I think you'll get some good questions going around. Just a lot of people are thinking about wildfires these days, and hopefully the heightened snowpacks will reduce that maybe this year, but it's definitely a part of design and construction moving forward. So this is a really important topic for everybody. So thanks for bringing it to this SHP day. So you're still on mute, Melissa, and then I'm going to zip off and let you take over.
Hello. Thanks for having me. This is a huge honor to be here today talking with you all. I was a sustainable homes professional student and got to see these showcases in the past, and wondered if someday I might get to do the same thing. So it's pretty awesome to be here. I chose to focus on a couple of really interesting aspects of this particular project, which is a unbuilt project in the middle of nowhere. And it happens to be in the middle of a forest. And it happened to be for somebody who was interested in building his retirement home and wanted it to be resilient and off-grid capable, and also didn't want his house to burn down. But before we get to that, let me just give you a little bit of background. It'll give you some context for some of the inspiration. Before I became a residential home designer, I spent more than 20 years working as a social worker. In fact, I'm still a licensed clinical social worker, mostly working in the medical profession. But in my early days, I worked in refugee camps and corrections environments. And from that, I learned a lot, and that is that we spend a lot of time looking at how the world has gotten under people's skin, how things have gone wrong. And as social workers, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out how can we help with resilience? How can we help people with a problem that has monopolized their life? How can we minimize the risk? How can we make things more healthy? How can we build in a more collaborative environment? And as it turns out, those are the very things that I bring into my practice as a residential designer, because they're the same issues. With the sustainable homes professional experience, first of all, I was lucky enough to get a scholarship. In December of 2020, I saw an advertisement pop up on Earth Advantage for this program, and I thought to myself, wow, that is really something that I would love to do. But I couldn't really justify it at the time. I was just starting my own business. I felt like this is something I want to do, but it was too much money. But then another advertisement came up saying we're still accepting applications for the scholarship, and I got super excited and applied. And then once the program started, I spent about a year watching probably 1 or 2 videos during my lunch break, and I just felt really inspired. I felt like the things that I'd learned about design it was a good background, but I was really drawn to the building science perspective that SHP provides. How to make things more durable, more efficient, how to get the air sealing right, how to do detailing around insulation, how to be really mindful about using healthy materials in the interior. Those things were really important to me, and I felt like they'd kind of been skimmed over. And in the traditional building world, I felt like they were not always, we didn't always nail those details. And so it was a really great opportunity to get more information and think about how I could take a deeper dive into that. And it also made me think a lot about the project that I'm going to be talking about today, because I had just finished it when I started the SHP program. And there were a lot of things about it that we had already targeted in those ways in terms of durability. But I felt like if I had had more information, if I had had a more complete design control, we could have made it even better. And so that's what we did. So let's start from the beginning here. This property is in the middle of nowhere. It's outside of Cathlamet, Washington, which is in Wahkiakum County. This is the actual site. It's about 4 acres. It's mostly surrounded by forest, and the interior of the site was cleared long ago. There were a couple of existing buildings on the site, one of them being a very small pump house for the well, and the other one being the workshop. The homeowner really wanted to build a very modest cabin on the center between the pump house and the workshop. And he wanted it to blend into the adjacent properties. He wanted it to be pretty simple, wanted it to look like a cabin, wanted to be able to do lots of gardening on the property. And he also didn't want his house to burn down. And he was also concerned that being in the middle of nowhere, that his power would go out and he wouldn't have any resources. And so those were some of the main things that we considered during the design process. Like I said, we ended up not going through with the construction of this building. I'd like you to think back to what 2020 was like. That was when we were working on this design process. We started late summer of 2020. And what that meant is we were all mostly inside. When we got together, we were masking. Everyone and their dog were trying to retrofit their homes to make offices in their homes, trying to build something better. People were not spending money on vacations, and so they were wanting to put money into construction. And at the same time, manufacturing companies were not able to bring people in. And so we had a lot of materials shortages. I also want to remind you that Memorial Day of 2020, we had a lot of wildfires around here. And so if you are somebody who has a property in the middle of nowhere with lots of trees and you want to build something new, this was a pretty frustrating time. And so while we put a lot of effort into designing the best home possible, in the end, the homeowner decided that the easier thing would be to order a kit home and have the whole thing show up on a flatbed truck. And then they could construct it easily and not have to worry about the material shortages and things like that. So for this project, I just went back and I redlined all of the pages in terms of how we could make this a better project. And some of that is interesting, but actually I think the things that are more interesting are the things that I'll talk about today in terms of how to really maximize the off-grid potential and the fire resistant design features. For my Sustainable Homes Professional project, I went for Energy Star single family certification. Just a side note, in the learnings that I've had since that time, I would actually think that this would be a great passive house project because passive house focuses a lot on really maximizing durability, airtightness, and a lot around healthy materials. And I think that the fire resistant design would also be a great thing to highlight. I'm going to kind of cruise through some of these slides to get to the juicy stuff. So in the original design, one of the features that I was working around, the homeowner had a set of windows that he'd already purchased, and he wanted all of those windows to be used in the home. When I was able to go back as a retrospective look, I could switch out all those windows and choose things that would be better for the performance of the house and fire resistance of the house. Some of these would be using triple pane windows that are tempered. That's great for the air sealing of the house, especially if you're mindful of sealing around the windows. It's great for R value. In the original design, we had specified exterior insulation around the entire house. In the new design, I just beefed that up to get more R value out of the process. Specifying things like good balanced ventilation, that would increase the healthy interior of the house. It would also improve the durability of the house. And all of this is to think like, if the house is in the middle of nowhere and your power goes out, you want this house to have a nice cozy sweater on it. So you're maintaining good interior air temperatures. You want it to be warmer in the wintertime, cooler in the summertime. And all of this can be done by really making sure the enclosure of the house is nicely detailed. In that area, propane was the most common form of fuel for homes. And for my project, I suggested that we completely get rid of the propane as an option and rely more on solar and perhaps ground source options for heating. And then being much more mindful about speccing materials that are good for interior air quality and energy efficiency. And like I said, if I had to do it now, I would go with passive house standards. which is really focusing on continuous insulation, airtightness, orienting the house properly. That had already been done, making sure there's good ventilation on the interior, and minimizing the sizing of the mechanical systems. One of the opportunities that we had at the site was the opportunity to use rainwater collection. It was a rural site. There were some farms nearby, something like great big cisterns to collect rainwater runoff off of metal roofing would have been great for the homeowner's garden. It also would have been a great opportunity for some of the fire prevention or reacting to fires should there be any. These are just some examples of some of the upgrades that I made to the project as I was going through for my final project. But I think the more interesting thing right now is to look at some of the wildfire features. Like I mentioned, we had used some exterior insulation. In the original design, we had called for that to be rock wool material, which is resistant to fire. We'd also included a rain screen. And one of the things that you often see in rain screen detailing is to have 2x4s on the flat. And that means that you have 1.5 inches of air gap between the exterior cladding and the rock wool insulation. One of the things that we're learning is that fire embers are smaller than 1.5 inches. And so it is a better opportunity to make sure the rain screen is between 3/8 of an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, to minimize the potential for embers to go up through that ventilation cavity. You also want to make sure that you have a metal blocking at the base of that rain screen. That is good for bug protection. And that metal grate has very small mesh fibers that prevent embers from getting up in there. You can also choose soffit vents that close automatically. They're called Vulcan vents if there's a fire event. Making sure to use a continuous ridge vent at the roof that is made out of metal and has blocking on it to prevent embers from getting into the ridge venting. And again, the windows being triple paned and tempered is another way to keep the outside of the house safe. At the time of the original design, we also spent time thinking about how to protect the landscape of the area, considering the proximity of those trees. The homeowner was really skilled at landscaping and was really ambitious about how could we use other strategies like keeping branches away from the house. Like one of the recommendations is 30 feet from any of the buildings or the decking to the tree line, keeping dead debris away from the house, using rocks as mulching, making some clear planning around what kind of plantings would be used. And then the materials that we would use would be things that would be less likely to burn, and then protecting those by having metal screens around the deck and porch and things like that. There are a lot of really great resources, especially after those 2020 fires, checklists even. I've included them at the end of my presentation. One of them that I've highlighted here is through CAL FIRE. If you Google that, there's a really excellent checklist that talks about how to safeguard your house from the outside, including the landscaping, how the house is built, materials used, and actually as a community, how can you respond to wildfire protection to protect one another. So I think one of the things that I also want to highlight is the importance of always learning, always keeping your skills fresh. I think sometimes we run across folks who have been doing this for years, and there's a lot of comfort in always doing the same thing and perfecting your design skills or your build skills without changing things. But I think we have a real opportunity to learn from what other folks have learned along the way, how to make buildings better, more resilient, more durable, healthier for us to live in. And as a designer, I really appreciate the collaborative opportunity that I get from working with other tradespeople, other folks who have businesses. And I really enjoy the opportunities that I get from working with my clients who often are sharing information that I didn't have. And we can have a lot of discussion around how can we design the best possible house for their needs. Oops. And again, there are a lot of really great resources. Most of these are on wildfires and how you can protect homes by choosing certain kinds of building materials and strategies around landscaping. But also, if you want to look into passive house design, that's a rabbit hole that is very deep and interesting. And I
All
guess
right.
now I'll open it up for questions, Stefan.
Thank you, Melissa. That was awesome. I love it. So yeah, there are a few questions, some that are general that we might hit in this section. Oh, got a dog that got excited. So one, with financing, I don't know if you looked into this because the project kind of never got to that point. But I think it's a good general question. I might just open it up and then I have some thoughts about it too. But in case you did kind of go down this path, were there any insights in the client financing for this high performance off-grid project? Because in this particular case, most banks, the guidelines require grid connection. So do you think that would have been a tripping hazard in this? Did you see that maybe coming or, explore that issue at all?
We did not explore that issue. One thing that I should mention is the client had a pot of money that was waiting for this process. He was hoping to keep the project pretty low budget. And I think that he was planning to do most of it through his savings. And actually some of the interesting aspects of the off-grid research, we went down several rabbit holes actually of off-grid living, looking at rocket mass heaters and kind of DIY air tubes, having a special root cellar under the sunroom of the house, things like that. In the end, all of those things really compromised the durability of the house. But in terms of financing, I don't know, but I would love to get more information about that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any of the panelists have any other insights. I've run into that before, and we've had owners refinance other properties to, finance this property. But again, that's not most cases wouldn't necessarily be able to do full financing that way. But I have run into that issue myself, and that's a real challenge with off-grid homes. So that's a good point. One thing you mentioned, and there's just a question about, but I have some thoughts about what the intent was there too. But you mentioned maybe triple pane glass improving air sealing over stuff like standard double pane. Is that true, or is a particular type of window? Could you maybe explain that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a lot of really great information out there. If you look into what is it called, Building Science Fight Club, there's a great YouTube video where she goes through and she looks at the performance of a triple pane window versus a double pane window. And I guess when I said air sealing, I kind of misspoke in my presentation. It's more about the R value. And if you're going to lose energy from the interior to the exterior, it's often going to happen at the windows. We all know that if we've been sitting next to a single pane window, it's often drafty. The warmth from our body is being sucked outside. We feel really chilly next to those single pane windows. If we beef that up and include double pane windows, the benefit is huge. But especially if we use a triple pane window, the science behind that shows that the benefit of using 3 panes of glass versus 2 is monumental. Oftentimes you can get an R value of like 9 out of your window if you're using R value as your comparison, versus 3 on lesser quality, lesser pane windows.
Great.
Also, the tempered window is a big benefit if you're in a fire zone, because the window, the glass, sometimes just the outer pane of glass would break rather than the entire window exploding into a million shards.
That's great. And yeah, you can look at air tightness can be, you can have a double pane that's super airtight. You can have a double pane that's really leaky. Same with triple pane windows. A lot of passive house folks like the tilt turn windows because they have 2 seals and 5 locking points for air tightness. But there are plenty other window systems out there that are tight enough to even get to that standard. So we're going to move on because we still have one more presenter, not a lot of time left. And you know, it's so really great to have Justin here at the end. I know it's going to be short to the point. I love it. And some really good insights on, you know, just how to cost effectively get to these similar zero energy goals. So, all right.
There we go. Thanks, Daniel and Melissa. I really appreciate your thoughts in the process, and the projects are inspiring, and it's fun to see. So I'm coming at things from a bit more of a production standpoint, and I just wanted to offer a few things from our story and experience along the way, and hopefully might be helpful and encouraging for everybody. So just by way of introduction, I'm Justin Wolverton. I get to work for Noyes Development as our quality assurance director. And as a company, we've been in business where we just celebrated our 30th anniversary, and building about 50, 60 homes a year here in Portland, and they're all zero energy ready. And my SHP project was a few years ago now, and but at the time that was it was based around this house, and we were looking for the most cost-effective way to take this house from what it was at the time, which was Earth Advantage Platinum certified, to Earth Advantage Zero Energy Ready certification. And so we looked at a lot of different ways to accomplish that, and did a bunch of energy modeling with Earth Advantage, and it was just a really fun and just informative process. And some of the challenges with this one, this was our most difficult home at the time to kind of get from platinum to zero energy ready for a number of reasons. It was over 4,000 square feet, limited space for solar, south facing. So as you can see, the front of the house has limited space for panels and all of that. Came in at a 1.8 ACH 50. So it was, not terrible, but not tight enough to accomplish a zero energy ready certification. So had to figure that one out. And then just working with our team, just figuring out, basically had, about $10,000 budget to accomplish that. Figured that the zero energy ready version of this home would be worth, at least $10,000 more than that. And there's a market there. So we kind of had to, we're working within that, in that budget frame to figure those things out. And so in the process, what we ended up doing was going from, we knew windows were going to be an important part of that. So going from a U30 to a U23 window, transitioning from a 96% gas furnace to a ducted heat pump was an important, aspect of the whole thing. And we're just moving more toward electric as well in the process. So that was a step in that direction. Going from about a 1.8 ACH 50 down to 0.9, kind of, just getting things tightened up. We knew it was going to be an important aspect. And then working with budget and everything, getting in the realm of about 8,600 was what we were looking at in there. And so that was a few years ago. Now all of our homes are zero energy ready, and so there were a few things that kind of really helped us along the way and to accomplish that. One of them was that now most of our Noyes development employees are sustainable homes professionals. That really got our team on the same page. It makes a big difference when we're having, planning sessions. They're just more lively and informed, and that training is transferring to our subs through our scopes of work and trade walks. Our site managers kind of holding our subs to the standards that we've set. And another thing, as I mentioned, was crucial was just tighter homes, tighter envelopes. Our ACH 50 results at a few years ago were all hovering around 2, within a few points of 2, and now they're down to within a few points of 1, and that's made a significant difference. We just finished a 3,500 square foot home last month that came in at a 0.73, which was one of our better scores, and so it's just been nice to see some improvement there. Things that have helped have been trade walks and making sure our subs are careful with the holes they're drilling, doing really careful insulation, aero barrier. Those have all helped us to tighten up our homes. And another thing that's been huge is just coaching from Earth Advantage. We've told them what our goals are and then followed their coaching along the way, and that's been huge. So just last week, one of our houses had an ACH 50 of 1.75, and Peter from Earth Advantage walked the house with one of our site managers and myself, and even while we were just in that process, figured out a few things and got it down to a 1.3, which was enough to qualify that for zero energy ready. We still weren't stoked about that score, but it definitely made an improvement. And then there are a lot of other ways to accumulate enough points to qualify for zero energy ready homes. And so Earth Advantage just helps us look at the whole picture. And like currently we're working on just shorter hot water runs so that people aren't wasting water waiting for it to get hot. So some of those things have been really helpful in the process. And I just wanted to, offer a few suggestions that kind of come out of our experience and several mistakes along the way, but just to kind of help you make the most of SHP training once you've kind of finished the course and incorporated the principles into your projects. And so it'll definitely take some intentionality to pull that off. I have yet to have anyone walk up to me and say, "Oh, hey, Noyes Development, you guys build all zero energy ready homes, right? And by the way, aren't you like a sustainable home professional? Because you sure look like one." Like that's just not a thing. That doesn't really happen. And so at least not for us, or not yet, but so definitely take some intentionality just to let people know and just to help really get the principles into the DNA of your organization and those that you're working with. And so I just wanted to offer a few quick suggestions kind of born out of our journey and over the past few years that could be helpful along those lines. So number one, I'd say during the SHP course, take notes like you'll have to teach this stuff, because you will. It's zero energy homes are relatively new to buyers and agents and home inspectors. So it's common in my role, buyers often assume that they have to open the windows to get fresh air in their homes. They should turn their thermostats down to 50 when they're gone. The irrigation stations should run 10 or 15 minutes each. And inspectors think there's no way that tiny little heat pump is sufficient for this big house. The laundry fan is broken, siding sounds hollow. All these things they just need to be explained thoroughly, thoughtfully. And the SHP course definitely equipped me to be able to do that. And then we've had some fun with it along the way too, making videos about a lot of the unique ways that make our homes better than a lot of homes, and then resources for our subs, our sales team, homeowners, anyone that's interested in hearing more about Noyes development. So that's all on our YouTube channel if you're interested. Next one would just be proactive. Informing is better than explaining. So kind of getting out in front of it. One of the things I've found really helpful for this is just I show up during private inspections, the homeowner inspections, and meet the inspector and the buyers, their agent, and I try to really head off some of the common items that end up in inspection reports that are kind of based on misunderstandings or just not being aware of, some of the high performance elements of our homes. And so I point out, we use rain screen as part of our wall system. That's why you see that gap at the top of the exterior walls, and the siding sounds a little hollow. The fan in the laundry room is not actually broken. It's part of the fresh air system. And, there are times when you can't turn it off for that reason. That's why. I often call inspectors and explain things, and I also end up learning things from them as well. And I do that especially if they inspect our homes often. And what we've started seeing, which is really cool, is inspectors are now explaining some of these things in their reports kind of for me, which is great, and telling the homeowners that they've chosen a great builder. And so that's been cool to see that starting to happen. And our sales team are now able to answer a lot of questions before they even get to me. And so what we're seeing is like the influence of our SHP training is spreading to people that have never even taken the course. So that's been exciting to happen. It's kind of we see that through a real proactive approach with those things. Number 3, I guess, would be exceeding expectations. Just makes it fun to come to work every day. The reality is most of our homeowners have already made their buying decision by the time that I meet with them. And they've never even heard of Earth Advantage at that point. The fact that I'm a sustainable home professional had zero impact on their buying decision. They don't even know yet that their home is zero energy ready. And so they chose the house basically because of the location, floor plan, schools. Buyers often tell me they choose a Noyes development home because, things that we offer as standard or upgrades for everyone else. But the reality is we haven't really needed Earth Advantage to sell most of our homes, but we would be missing a huge opportunity if we just thought, well, house is sold, our job is done here. Let's, show them where stuff is, hand over the keys. I'm probably being a little dramatic about this, but that just feels tragic to me. Building to Earth Advantage standards is a great idea on just a lot of levels, even if your homeowners don't know about it. But why would you leave that out when it is such good news? And when we find that, buyers are often nervous about having just committed to this massive investment, having a bunch of great news to share with them and reassure them with has been huge. And so exceeding expectations is just a lot of fun in that way, and just getting the word out, making sure people know what it is that they have and how to best take care of it. Next one, is number 4, would just be final one, would just be invest in referral sales. This has been something we've seen and it just seems to be picking up momentum, and we love that. So buyers may not realize it in general, but I'm during the orientation, I'm not only making sure that they love their new home, I'm also selling a future house to their friends and family. I want them to be so proud of their house that I can confidently ask them for a 5-star review. I want them just like glowing when it comes time for their open house or their puja, their the first time their parents visit, which we all know is like the real test, and oftentimes if I have during an orientation, if I have one partner that will wander off, when they come back, I ask the partner that's with me to kind of give them a quick recap so they can practice bragging about their home. And it's reality is just referral sales are by so far the most efficient way to sell homes. We've noticed, like, when people don't know us, it takes a while to gain their confidence, and I get that, right? People have probably had bad experiences in the past, maybe with other builders, and so they, it makes sense that they would come in and be cautious. But when people have been referred to us, it's just a totally different experience. It's just so much more fun and relaxed. We save money on listing, staging, paying the loan while the home sits waiting for a buyer. So it's just just makes a big difference there. And then just to kind of wrap that stuff up, I'll just say that having an SHP after your name and certifying your projects through Earth Advantage it's a great idea, even if your customers never know about it. But if you're going to build beautiful, high performance homes, you might as well make sure that your team is really proud of what you do. Why not make sure that your subs love having their name attached to yours? Might as well make sure that your sales team has all the resources they need, that they have the confidence in you and your homes. And then I'd say, just why not make sure that your buyers are so happy that they sell homes for you? And then just to kind of wrap that up, might as well make sure that your reputation, which is huge, maybe your legacy even, reflects the commitment that you've made to sustainability and excellence. So none of this happens automatically because you took the course. So that's why I wanted to just suggest a few ways to get SHP into your DNA. So there you go. Hope that helps. Thanks.
Yes, I love it. Thank you, Justin. That was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed that presentation. So Justin, a couple of things. And generally, I definitely used to know the answer to this for Noyes. I've seen so many of your projects over the years, and it's been a lot of fun working with Earth Advantage and doing the SHP course for about 12 years now. And Noyes was there basically back at the beginning for me, and just kind of watching that evolution and that kind of angst of market opportunity, but then also recognizing that just having this better product in the end is just a feel good double down on on a company that wants to put quality first. So I thought that was really fantastic way you shared that. One of the things, there's some general questions about, like, do you have like an average air tightness in your homes? I think you kind of alluded to, I think way back when it was like in the 3 or 4, and then recently it was kind of in the 2 zones, and now you're seeing your average ACHs like hovering around 1 ACH 50. And so, but what are the kind of key air barrier strategies? Because I've seen Noyes experiment with a bunch over the years.
Yeah.
But what are the key strategies that you found that have been most effective to getting where you are? And there's a mention of aero barrier. Are you using aero barrier?
We are.
Okay. And so maybe you can just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's been an ongoing test. I remember when we were hovering around scores of 2 or so, and we were just pretty determined to get them down to 1, and it took us a while trying to figure that out, and just experimenting with a lot of different things. But some of the things that have been most helpful have been just trade walks and working with our subs to make sure they're drilling really small holes, working with our insulators to make sure they're sealing things up really carefully, just walking the houses and just checking those things. Obviously, taping, sealing, top plates, bottom plates, doing blackout, inspections of the attic before installation, just see anywhere there's light coming through, making sure we're sealing those up carefully. Aero barrier has been a big factor on all of that. It just really helps to seal up small holes, and so that's helped quite a bit as well. So those have been some of the main things that we've noticed that have made a difference.
Great. So aero barrier is probably relatively new. Maybe that was the drop of being in the high 1s down to the low 1s or lower is my guess. But
yeah, it was, and it took us a while to make that decision. It's a bit of money and all of that. And we were trying to figure out if there were other ways that we could do it, but it ended up being worth it and being a significant factor for us.
Yeah, I remember probably in 2009 or 10, I had a meeting with Nia and the now executive director of Earth Advantage, and there was a conversation like, how do we get production homes down to 2.5 ACH 50? And we're like, well, tape and seal the air barrier or weather barrier on the outside of the house, so like your Tyvek, and do blackout air seal in the drywall were the primary, and then again, kind of any interior and crawl sealing packages you can do with the insulation. And it sounds like that works. Worked really well and got you guys down into that 2 zone, maybe a little lower consistently. I do know you even with that, sometimes you were down at 1. And then aero barrier just kind of helped wrap that up and make that last little distance. I say that because 1 ACH 50 is pretty incredible for production homes, and 10 years ago it seemed like an insurmountable goal for a lot of people, and there's like a lot of guessing, like this is how it might work, and it's just fantastic to see that it's worked.
Yeah,
So,
it's a really fun part during the orientation with homeowners. That's one of the, I actually explained that. It seems maybe like it would be, a little technical or whatever, but I've kind of found a way to give some context to what we mean when we're talking about high performance homes and how it relates to, the ACH 50, kind of how that relates to, the home being more comfortable, healthy, and efficient and all of that. So it's been fun.
So do you feel like Noyes has kind of hit their event horizon as far as now you're doing Zero Energy Ready is kind of like a slam dunk for you? What, if anything, kind of in that space of better buildings is on the horizon for Noyes? Like, what do you think is coming up? Is it just continuing to kind of narrow in, make things more efficient? Is there a new horizon for Noyes that you're going to kind of be pushing toward now that you've hit this pretty fantastic goal?
No, we're just going to sit on our hands and call it good, just mail it in, whatever, call it in, whatever. No, we're always improving things. We love to just continue to explore, continue to learn. There's always new technologies, new materials, things that are coming out, and so we're looking at those pretty consistently, and just always trying to make some improvements. We've got some other developments coming up that have some different spec levels and things that we're talking about, but that commitment to Zero Energy Ready and moving on. I've been just exploring more and learning more about something you guys are very well versed in, passive house standards, and we're always kind of looking out ahead of what we're currently doing and trying to learn from that and incorporate things into our homes. So that's what we've been doing for a long time and we'll continue to do. And so, yeah, it's as far as specific goals and things like that, I don't know that we're, have identified those in particular, but just the general commitment to always improving things. And
great. Someone asked if Melissa, if you have a website, and I don't know if you do, but now might not be a bad time to share that. Maybe share that in the chat if you get opportunity, if you've got a website.
I do, and it's under construction, so it's very basic right now.
Okay.
But I'll put the link in there.
Okay, great. Thank you. I've got a general question maybe for all of you just to answer. Have any of you been taking advantage of the Energy Trust early design assistance in your projects? And if so, can anyone speak to that? Or if not, any challenges, or is that new information to you? Any three of you?
That's new to me, so I would like to look more into it, learn more about it.
Is that something Noyes takes advantage of, that early design assistance on your individual homes?
I haven't personally been involved with that, but I have heard that, yeah, we as a company are, but I can't really speak to it.
Yeah, usually again, I should know more too right now, but generally it's about a $500, early design assistance is what it has been. I don't know if that's changed this year. It's something you can look up pretty easily at the Energy Trust of Oregon's website. And typically it just involves, if in that first meeting or early meeting, maybe Daniel, that you had, sometimes you just need to you have to explore zero energy for the home and like what it would, take to get there. And having a mechanical contractor typically, or someone who's, brings that expertise to the table to help specify systems, and having the contractor there to kind of review envelope and stuff like that, basically is what you need to get to that, to have that meeting, have the ETO person there, and then there's a $500 kind of check that you can get for that. The nice thing is, there's this question about like, how do you pay for some of this stuff? You're probably not paying for that entire meeting with $500 if you're bringing in if you have a custom builder and an architect and mechanical contractor and you want to pay them all, but it gets you a lot of that distance. So anyway, I think that's a good one. If folks aren't using that right now, it's, I think, underutilized, because like everything in the beginning of a project, you're just like, woo, contract signed, or like, we're ready to move forward on development or of this home, and that's the easy stuff to forget about. There are also Energy Trust of Oregon incentives that come on the back end after you kind of reach performance metrics, but that $500 is kind of there and gone at the beginning. So if you don't take advantage of it, then it doesn't show back up at the end. So it's a good one. Thanks for whoever brought that question up.
I didn't know about that resource, but I'm really happy to have it.
Yeah. So it's a great one. Energy
I'll be
Trust
looking into it.
often underutilized that way. And now with IRA, there's a lot of new tax credits out there and available for some of these upgrades, and can be a little difficult depending on your business model and how that works, because those go to the owners. But it is something that is very valuable for people purchasing these homes or having these homes built. Another question was, how often do you do pricing updates in the kind of pre-design or pre-construction phase of the work? And like, what does that process look like? And I'm curious, even, from any of you, Daniel, you definitely had to look through pricing. I don't know if this is something that's baked into your process now or not. I have some thoughts about it too, but if you guys have, as you're kind of going through, pre-development phase on your projects, how often are you looking at pricing?
Yeah, I think on my own personal project, we kind of used the design milestones as that point. So at the end of conceptual design, I did a cost estimate, obviously just self-performed, and then at the end of schematic design, and then at the end of design development. So that seemed to work really well for my project personally.
Yeah, any other feedback from, I have the same experience on our end. We often will have even a pre-design concept budget, which is like some Imagineering budget that you put down because you've done something similar in the past, or kind of usually using concepts, and people are talking about square footages and just trying to give a ballpark. If someone asks like, how do you do that without without knowing like things like the structural engineering? And the best I can say is it's an estimate. So structural engineering is coming, and if it's going to look like Daniel's home, it might be more complicated than if it looks like one of the Noyes homes from a structural engineering standpoint. So you might have a little bit more pocketed for a more modern contemporary home. Daniel's case, they were able to kind of engineer out steel and things like that. But I guess it likely, you have an instinct, or you will develop that over time with your different designs and things like that, about what kind of buffers you put in. But basically you buffer the numbers would be my short answer to that. And you're very it's like the design process is very conceptual budget at first, and then it gets refined throughout the design process. I don't know if anyone else has any input on that question. Please jump in.
I liked Daniel's mention of charging for those initial price estimates. I've worked somewhere where we did some of that, and it is enormously time consuming to go through the entire, I mean, especially if it's a big project. If you're trying to get pricing, for example, on lumber, those are very variable rates, and you have to be tracking constantly how much lumber is going to cost and all of those other materials, and if they're available. And if you're accounting for the subcontractor cost of tile installation and electrical work and all of that, I mean, you could be spending weeks coming up with a really good estimate for somebody, and that's a lot of time to give away, where you're not spending meaningfully working on projects that you already have going.
Yeah, especially if you get those designs in like the design development construction documents phase where there is actually a lot there. I almost feel like it's harder when you've got construction documents because now you've got something you need to really precisely bid out versus conceptually. And the hard part is sometimes they're so far off budget at that phase, but you're spending all this time, and it would have been a lot easier to get a concept budget out earlier and kind of rip that band-aid off early, sometimes coming in late and then working for free and all of it kind of adds up to a really not fun experience in my personal opinion. So I can't go back to that anymore for me because of that. And so I really have a lot of empathy for builders that do spend all of that time and dive in and get 30% of those at best. So anyway.
Yeah, we found too that it really doubles as a filtering process too. Occasionally we get people that bulk, you charge $750 for a cost estimate, or you charge for pre-construction, and I think really quickly that tells me that that's not really our client. So it saves a lot of tire kicking and just kind of wasted time. So
yeah, there's a question along these lines. At what point in the design are you bidding the work out with subcontractors? We wait for bidding what we call buyout until basically the very end. And in the interim, we're just having some very informal, like, hey, what do you think about, phone call conversations, or in passing on a job site conversation about it, the project that we have in design, which is not the project we were on site working on at the moment, just to kind of get a sense. So as we're kind of guesstimating through the design process, we don't go too far off track. But I found it's still best with trades to not waste their time too much and really try to get informal feedback as best as possible, understand what they're looking for, and then get them to put in their actual bids when the design is fully baked. But it's still super important to get their feedback along the way. But I guess for me, it's meeting them where they're at, which is often on the job site, and trying to pull them into an architectural office or design office off of a job site. I found that there's going to be a lot of anxiety because they're not where they're supposed to be, which is keeping an eye on their crews and or the production of the work. And so there's not a great focus. And so to me, it's always worked best to try to meet people where they're at and integrate in a process that they're used to. But informal touch-ins along the way is super helpful. All right. Anyone have any feedback, learning experiences with exterior insulation that you can talk to? The good, the bad, the expensive or not? Maybe worries about embodied carbon, or worries about fire, or worries about cost, effectiveness.
We were seriously considering that a few years ago, and I decided, because of cost and because of kind of other ways to accomplish the same sort of things, then it's not something that we ended up doing.
A little divergent, but there's a new Stefan, you're probably familiar with it, but Timber HP is this company that's about to start producing wood fiber insulation in the US from US materials. So personally really excited about that coming on the market, and hopefully at a good value too, it sounds like. So
Yes, the idea is that they're going to shoot for cost competitive with exterior with mineral wool. There are some really good initial fire rating tests on exterior fiber board, which is maybe counterintuitive, but the density and the fact that it's in a paraffin wax and it's really airtight, they do have shown a really good fire resilience. So that's pretty exciting, that which is also what's been seen with this same type of products being produced out of Germany right now, but not having to ship it either A, across the country, or B, from Europe. It's going to, I think, really be a great low carbon, low embodied energy exterior insulation product, and could be a good cost effective option, a little bit easier to install over than like a mineral wool that has more compression and less embodied energy, and less fossil fuels than you might have in a foam board. So, and less concern about site mess. There's been concerns about cutting all that foam board, and then you get pieces of foam blown all over a neighborhood, and then suddenly you're the hypocritical green builder. Right, getting foam into the streams and saying, being happy about the zero energy. So anyway, I'm pretty excited about that too, Timber HP product.
A couple of months ago, Earth Advantage sponsored a passive house tour that was really fascinating. And one of the homes on the tour was actually a home that was having to be rebuilt after it burned down during the 2020 Memorial or Labor Day fire. And they were using cork insulation. This was a bird's mouth project. And there was an interesting side discussion around the choice of that material. Part of it was the shortage of, or the lack of availability of mineral wool, but also the lower embodied carbon of cork. And it was, while it was a more expensive material to choose, it was easier for the crew to work with in the field because it could be easily cut. It didn't compress as much as mineral wool. And also there was a discussion around the US is looking at the potential to have to start a cork, what would you call it, a farm, a cork manufacturing entity that could be here, so that we wouldn't have to be shipping that across the ocean. So that's another interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, cork's great because it can double as your insulation and siding, and we've used it on projects. It's yeah, I really like it. It was an option. Someone did share in the chat a link to EPS kind of new construction, and in there's some information about incentives. So I think that one's a good link for folks if they can see that. Someone did also mention, like, can't iterate enough, like making sure that you don't have conflicts between your mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades, and having that built into the design. I kind of forget about that because we do have a process ourselves about making sure that doesn't conflict during the design process. I'm certain that, for a production builder like Noyes, they're also doing the same thing where, all of this stuff about keeping ducts inside and having structures that allow for the free movement of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing is super important, and integrating that with your structural. So that's one of the things that I know we're looking for in structural reviews during design development, is making sure that we have clear paths for those three trades in particular, especially mechanical, but also, plumbing and all that matters. So, where does all that stuff go? In schematic design, I'm always like, where's your mechanical room? Why isn't it bigger? How, like, that's a really small closet for that furnace. If you want to add a filtration system down the road, that's going to be complicated. So if you can make it bigger, do. So that's a really great. Someone just basically made that point. Tim Kaiser, thank you. That's an excellent point. All right.
Well, I want to interrupt real quick, Stefan, and say
Okay.
we're a little over 10:30. If you all would like to stay on and keep answering questions, I won't stop you. But I also wanted to let you know I want to respect your time today, and thank you so much for giving so much time and expertise and knowledge with everyone.
I think we've hit all the big ones, so I think we're good. I was just going through the list, so it was great.
Well, thank you again to all of our presenters, to Stefan for emceeing, and to everyone for joining. Again, if you have any questions regarding today's training or any of Earth Advantage's trainings, feel free to reach out to us at education@earthadvantage.org. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Aubrey. Thanks,
Thanks,
Stefan.
Aubrey. Take
Thanks.
care, everyone.
Everyone, bye.
Cheers.